Don't you think they are the most wonderful, good-looking, diverse panel? Thank you for being here. My name is Jansen, and our title is, I hope it's a little bit more visible, but it's Smart Cities equals Secure Cities. Dream or possibility? By raise of hand, who think it's not possible? Who think it's a dream and we can do it? So first one, who thinks it's doable? It's what we need. All right, we have a very visionary people here, and we also have people who are pragmatic. It looks like, and a little bit not so much raising the hand. So our panel is going to actually focus on whether it's necessary, and if it is, why. Our panelists are very diverse from multiple sectors. We have two government representatives, Marcelo, who is the Chief Information Security Officer of San Jose City, and we have Benny. Benny is from San Mateo County, the Program Director of Broadband Wireless Program. We also have private sector representatives. Maitjian is the founder and CEO of CMIT Solutions in the Bay Area. And we have Richard Wang, from the pure water supply. No, what is the best way to say it? So, as everyone knows, I'm just checking to see, yeah, this is effective. As everyone knows, if we leave out critical infrastructure, when smart city initiatives are being built, the residents probably are all going to be worried. So we have, fortunately, Richard to also share his insight in that space. And then, dear and close to my heart is what Jimmy Sanders does as a cybersecurity professional and leader in the space to bring this very short expertise to broader usage by governments, by nonprofits, and connecting the profit world with these sectors that need the help. So let's give them a warm welcome before we start, please. Thank you very much. So now we're just going to dive right into the questions. The first one is, can we leave out security and privacy when planning smart city initiatives? Now, this question, I do have a little backdrop to share. VentureSurf, one of the founding fathers of the internet, right, who also happens to be a partner of my nonprofit, said recently that if he had a chance to redesign internet all over again, would you think he would actually fix the cybersecurity problems at the get-go? Right? It had two inherent problems. And his answers are actually, no, I would not. So now, many years forward to current day today, I wonder what our panelists think, whether it is also parallel to smart cities initiatives. Can we leave them out or not? So please take a go. Smart cities, I think, Marcelo.
Sure, thank you, Len. I'm honored to be here. It's my pleasure to be here. I think that, as you stated, and probably our audience showed some of the stats, there are some people that believe that it's not possible, and of course, the majority we feel and believe it's possible. But let me just take a pause and think about what we're talking about. We're talking about privacy and we're talking about security. And I know that our audience is probably very much technical, but maybe for the ones that are not so much technical, let me just make a distinguish the factors that distinguish the two. So when you talk about security, you're talking about implementing confidentiality, integrity, and availability on that data, on the data you're trying to protect. And so confidentiality is who's going to have access to that data. Integrity is how are you going to make sure that that data is not tampered with. And availability is, can I use that data when I need it? And so that's part of security. And now, when it comes to privacy, you're talking about citizens or residents and their private information. And so the questions are, who's going to collect my data? Why are you going to collect my data? And who are you going to share it with? And are you going to tell me that you're sharing my data? Are you going to ask me if I'm willing to let you share my data? And so the overlapping between security and privacy is, how are you going to actually protect the data that belongs to me? And so with that backdrop, I would say, and the city of San Jose has over 32 innovative initiatives. And so imagine a situation in which you implement all these impactful to society initiatives, innovation at every level, and imagine that all those initiatives have security flaws. Well, it's not too hard to imagine. I mean, we actually have the situation in which several cities have been compromised since the beginning of the year. The last compromise happened this week in the city of Philadelphia. They are actually currently not providing services to their constituents, and you can go back to other cities. In Atlanta, Georgia, I think they were down for several weeks, and the list goes on and on. Baltimore got hit twice. The second time, it crippled their 9/11 capabilities. And all of those things cost a lot of money. If you take the factor that every record that gets compromised costs about $700. So for the city of San Jose, for example, 1 million residents, that will take you about $700 million to come off of that breach. And so it's smarter to invest money up front to prevent some of those compromises. And so the answer to the question, I'm sorry I'm taking too long, is we cannot afford to actually not have the security and the privacy embedded in our designs. And it's our responsibility as government officials to ensure that every initiative is actually designed with security in mind, and that privacy is embedded in every aspect of the design.
Thank you, Marcelo. I think this is why I'm a resident in San Jose. I do not want to risk it somewhere else where I don't know for sure. Next up, Maitjian, please.
Yes, thank you for having me here. Manger, Welke, my company is CMIT Solution. I wanted to say that I completely agree with Marcelo as far as security is very critical. I also want to bring a slightly different view on developing software, because that's what my background is. When you, in the early stage of innovation, if you build too much security in, it may not get adopted. It may slow down adoption. So it depends on what stage is the innovation and how it matures. If it's really easy to use, it get adopted. And now all of a sudden you see on our daily lives, it definitely needs to be secure. The one thing to keep in mind as a developer or software engineer is that as you design and architect software, always with the mindset of security, even when you don't implement security in it yet. So I think that's really key from the software engineering perspective.
Thank you, Maitjian. I was going to say, okay, next time I meet Mateo, I'm going to give him a good hearing of my perspective. But now with what you said, I'll go easy on him.
That is very true, because otherwise you don't see this, how the social media platform has grown so much because of that. But I agree that security is very critical, because I see data breaches everywhere. So it's very critical that we always have that mindset of making sure that things are very secure in our implementation.
Benny, please.
Yes, so actually, I think she stole some of my answers. I was going to bifurcate into two modes: maturity, right? Because obviously, when you're developing something new, that site, it has product life cycle, and it has to go through certain stages to maturity. And of course, in the maturity, even before the maturity phase, you have to start looking into the security aspect. As it goes along its cycle, let's take a look at Facebook, for example. Facebook actually had a lot of adoptions. The security layers were starting to be put in, but bear in mind, because a lot of it was private information, personal information that was actually publicly put out into the public. Part of the challenge that you have is the education, because it's not just adopting users, it's also educating the users that to really understand how much of their information is being out there. Because the elections were hacked. Facebook was hacked in terms of social engineering. So we have to basically look at it from multiple channels, right? Obviously, building in security into technology is very, very important. We heard a couple examples earlier with certain cities that were down for multiple months, right, and costing them hundreds of millions of dollars. But you know, for the user, for the average resident, how do you explain to a grandmother who is actually counting on every single dollar to stay alive, and then suddenly being social engineered or hacked, right, and having all her funds stolen, right? So that's the real story. We have to make sure that we focus on also protecting some of the most vulnerable populations, because not everybody's going to have that same level of education. We have a diverse population in terms of different age groups, different ethnic backgrounds, even different language skills. So building in cybersecurity is very important. I think what it is that you have to take a look at data first. There's appropriate use, there's inappropriate use, and there's misuse. Right? And what we can try to do is we can definitely educate folks on inappropriate use and to protect their data. The misuse is basically the bad actors that we really have to develop programs to basically stop, as well as make sure that we go after the bad actors.
Thank you, Lenny, for that perspective. And indeed, governments have special responsibilities that won't serve properly if you approach it as a startup or new technological experimentation. You don't have to consider. So thank you for that. Now we have 3 people all saying yes. We needed to have it in early on. Do we have dissenters in Jimmy and Richard?
Yeah.
Let's hear from Jimmy.
So for me, from the government side, it is not the government's job to be security experts. To me, the security industry as a whole, we have done a bad job of communicating our expertise and translating that to the end user, because when we are building these products where everybody has to worry about adding an antivirus, firewall, blah, blah, blah onto the system, that means that the security profession has done a bad job of education and also working with the community. So what I feel like is that government should try to focus on ensuring that they're providing the best services possible, and they partner with or work with security professionals instead of the government becoming security professionals.
I can't agree with you more, even though I'm in it with you together. So yeah, we have quite a ways to go to get our craft up to the need level. Thank you, Jimmy. Richard.
So to answer the question, I want to first make an analogy. Would the audience, would you like to live in a house where it's pretty much like a bomb shelter, where there's 12-inch of concrete and there's only one door? It's very inconvenient. Or would you prefer to live in a nice house with nice view, a window where you can go out, look out? So there's really a fine line that really we have to do to ensure that security, aesthetics, and convenience is properly aligned. And it depends on the target audience. What do they prefer? Which world they live in? It also, as people, we need to have the responsibility to make sure we protect ourselves and our family, right? We can live in a very nice house with doors, windows, but we need to have the responsibility to make sure we put in the preventive measures to protect the house and our family. For example, make sure you have locks on your door. Make sure that when you go out, you lock your door. Make sure you have an alarm system to prevent and alert you in the event of an intrusion. So there's really a fine line, and we, as people, we need to have a responsibility to make sure we properly implement the controls we need to do, security control, to protect ourselves and our family.
Thank you, Richard. And that is really true in what you said is the whole ecosystem, not just the government, you do it all, or cybersecurity professionals, you do it all, then we, everyone else, it's just consumer. But that definitely is not adequate as we have seen in real life. So thank you for such a diverse perspective to look at this question from different angles. So I think it's, and that's a shameless plug-in for me. So my nonprofit, therefore, is called Adaptable Security. So to Richard's point, there's no absolute security, but the best you can do is to be adaptable, stay in 1 or 2 steps ahead of the bad guys. That we can do, right? So that being said, moving on to the second question, which is that do the critical infrastructure sectors get special protection in smart city initiatives? For example, what we mean by critical infrastructure, right? It's really what touches on our lives on a daily basis. For example, water, food, power, transportation, emergency services, banking, information communication, law enforcement, and health. I did not mention yet, right? So all of this are tied to our everyday being. And do they get special protection in all of the smart cities conversations? Let's go with Richard first.
So I work for Cal Water, and we're one of the 16 critical infrastructures in the United States, and Lan has already explained very well what critical infrastructure is. And I can tell you for a fact that when I reach out to DHS, Department of Homeland Security, or the FBI, they will very willingly help me with anything that I need. For example, tabletop exercise that we conduct every year, I invite them to speak at our company and participate in tabletop exercise. So definitely being in one of these 16 critical infrastructure, you get special treatments from these departments. And in addition, if you think about it, back in 2015 in Ukraine, the Russians actually took down the Ukrainian power line right before Christmas. And in this day and age, nation-state sponsored attacks are very much at the forefront, and cyber wars are already happening. So it is definitely very important that we protect the 16 critical infrastructure, because if I'm your adversary and I want to take down your nation, I would definitely target one of the 16 critical infrastructure, because that's the most damage and most impact you can make. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I think Jimmy.
Yes, so it sounds good to say the 16, but my issue with that is that what priority are you going to make the 16? And so when you start thinking about a security strategy and security policies, hopefully we're doing it in a prioritization way, such that we know which one we should spend the most monies toward, what we should be doing the most tools toward, and what has the most impact among our citizens.
Yep. So the authorities will need to take all of that into consideration. Please.
Well, there's a number of dimensions to it, right? So, one of them is the physical security, and also to ensure that, like cyber attacks do not have an impact. There's also the health of the community. I'll give an example is that, while I'm in elected office, one of the things that I always tell people is always challenge your elected officer. A perfect example is take a look at the Flint water situation. You let a bunch of politicians decide on how the water should be treated, right? And basically, river water went into a system that basically exposed lead to the public. Obviously, smart infrastructure would help in terms of detecting that early on. That was an issue that was 7 years ago. Today, they still have lead in the water. Obviously, it's a bigger issue that they have to try to solve. When I mentioned earlier about the vulnerable populations, we're not just only talking about seniors, we're talking about those who have disabilities, developmental disabilities. Those are folks that we want to bring back into the system so that they can actually participate in this great system. So when you're talking about critical infrastructure, I'll use one case example. In the county of San Mateo, we have one road that goes into, actually multiple roads that go into the Bay area and the rest of the rural areas, which houses about 30,000 families. When you take a look at that, early in January, there was a truck that hit a principal power pole. That principal power pole basically provided pretty much all the electricity to that area. Our internet services were down for more than 20 hours. Power was down for more than 20 hours. There are seniors who were depending on their oxygen tanks. There was no way of communicating to the families because all the radio systems were down because there was no power. The radio systems that worked were the ones that had redundant energy backup with generators, and that was one of the good things that the county did early on. The Devil's Slide Tunnel had to stop because there was no power to power the fans. So there would have been massive carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide buildup with slowing traffic, which would have killed people. Right? So smart infrastructure is very important. Those are some of the things that we have to watch out for, because if we don't, obviously, it's not just the role of government; it's a role of partnering with every single stakeholder. You're talking about the cybersecurity experts, the utility companies, the water companies. Without that partnership, it wouldn't work. And one last thing, we don't have any connectivity going through that Devil's Slide Tunnel. There are conduits in there, and basically because it was considered a sacred territory for Caltrans, but because of our state senator as well as our 2 assembly members there, they brought them to the table, and now there's discussion with the providers to partner to create that redundant connection along with redundant power.
Wow.
What is going to share that thinking about
Excellent. So definitely, I think that one of the things that we must realize that when we talk about critical infrastructure, we're looking at the impact. That if something were to happen to those systems, then the impact would be catastrophic for people. And so I agree with Richard in one of those events in which one nation state was trying to invade another and cripple the infrastructure so that they could go in a lot easier. So the kinetic world took advantage of the cybersecurity world before launching an attack. And so that brings me to the point of the threat landscape changing. It used to be that the bad guys, or the guys that are trying to make a buck, would be going after making a quick buck. But nation states with a lot of resources, a lot of money, are going after critical infrastructure. We know that, and that has changed. So we need to protect ourselves. And so going to the partnership portion and going to, how are you going to address those things? Absolutely, this is an ecosystem, right? I mean, we, as part of the government, would not want to take on the sole responsibility to become the experts. We definitely need to partner with folks that are developing the solutions. We need to rely on other organizations that actually provide the expertise, which, for example, the National Institute of Standards and Technology develops all these approaches that are true and tried, right? And so for critical infrastructure, what we call critical control systems, they have special publications. Publication 882, for example, deals with industrial control systems. And so the approach is not something that the government needs to invent, but the government needs to adopt. And so the approach is simple. You need to determine the level of protection that you need to provide to those industrial systems. You need to determine the controls that you need to apply to those systems. Come back and implement those controls, test them, look for risks, look for gaps, and authorize that the system is fit to actually operate, and then continuously monitor those systems. And so those approaches in combination with the tools that the private sector provides will yield you that result, which is protecting our critical infrastructure, at the end of the day, it's protecting the people. It's about the people. It's about our services. It's about our way of life. So.
Thank you. Glad you mentioned about NIST. So another quickly plug in is that besides being the CEO of my nonprofit, Adaptable Security, I actually do also help out on the NIST and DHS, Department of Homeland Security initiatives. One is called the Smart Secure Cities and Communities Challenge. It's actually an international initiative. And I am co-chairing the cybersecurity and privacy committee for it. And this July, there is an international expo in Washington, D.C., the Expo Center. Because it's government-sponsored event, all businesses and governments are welcome to claim and pay for of their own, and then just share and collect wisdom from each other. So consider this an invitation, you all. All right, coming back to Manger, Maitjian, sorry.
So I agree with all of what's said here, because this critical infrastructure really impact, like Marcelo said, that it's impacting our safety, it's impacting national security. So it is absolutely important that they need to get special protection. I would add that not just these entities, but the supply chain to this entity are so critical to be protected as well. We've seen a lot of data breaches that are happening through this supplier of the government entity that get breached. And that could, in a way, impacting the critical infrastructure as well, right? Just very recent data this month, a company that does license plate reader technology is being hacked, and this is a government supplier, right? Even large corporations, a lot of them got hacked through their third-party vendor, Target, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the latest report from Symantec shows that it is increasing by 78% in the supply chain as far as data breaches. So it's critical, the whole chain had to be, everybody has to step up when it comes to cybersecurity. You can't just put it in one place, it has to be everywhere, right, to the whole supply chain. And throughout this whole ecosystem. So.
That is a perfect segue to our next question, because indeed, a superhero approach does not seem to work in this sector, as we know. So our third question is budget and expertise. We're all competing for these two things. Where can we find them? And we know governments, especially, and nonprofits, they are a little bit short in those two things, right? So the question is, can the panel share 1 to 2 pragmatic tips to tackle these two head on? Let's go with that.
Certainly. So I'll give a couple of examples, right? Often when we talk about budgets, we're trying to take a nickel and stretch it into a dollar, as I would call it, right? When you're talking about leveraging technologies is not just about the short term, it's also about the long term. Perfect example is, an unrelated example to cybersecurity, right? We have, in San Leandro, we implemented LED smart street lights. It was a $5.2 million program, but this energy savings itself over 15 years was going to be $7.8 million, which yielded $2.6 million in energy savings. That was one of the presentations that staff gave to us. And one of the comments I said to staff is, you're saving actually a lot more. And the staff member said, well, what do you mean we're saving more? When you have the old legacy sodium lamps, you have to go and change them every year, one by one. And the cost of staff time is anywhere from $100 to $200 per pole. We have 5,000 poles. Imagine doing that for 15 years. you're not only saving money in terms of the long run, in terms of just the energy savings, it's the staff time, because you can reallocate that staff time to other uses. So a pragmatic way is, when you're talking about budgeting, don't talk about just the short term, talk about the long term. So that's a key takeaway I'm going to give here.
Yes.
Yeah, dialogue here.
So I would offer this to any city that's in the Bay Area. My chapter in ISSA would be more than willing to share security expertise with any city. As being an organization, our goal is to make sure that our community and our members are safe and secure. And we would want to make sure that our cities get the same treatment.
So I'm on the board of directors for a brother chapter, ISSA, Silicon Valley chapter. So we're like brothers and sisters. So but we are aligned in providing support to our communities and governments. So very quickly we have Maitjian, then Marcelo, then Manger, and then we're wrap up.
Okay. So I think these two challenges is challenges for everyone here in Silicon Valley, probably more so on the talent side than the budget side, depending on the organization. The one thing that has helped, whether it's a private or public sector, is to partner together. You know, for the government side, to partner with the private sector, because sometimes you don't have expertise everywhere. I think as a team you accomplish more, and you can achieve and get the solution out quicker, right? So I'm gonna.
Thanks. I think that pretty much in alignment with what has been said so far. The challenge for us is being a city. We pay well, but competing with the giant center of technology of the world is not easy, right? And so we have to do things that are slightly different. So the first thing that we do, and according to the statistics, is that people leave their jobs because of their boss. So, in our case, we want to tackle that by saying we're going to provide you with good leadership. We're going to provide you with what you feel that it is working for the organization and for yourself. So we also want to make sure that they're trained properly. So we offer them a good training, a package that allows them to not only renew their skill sets on a timely basis to keep up with the demands and with the changing technology, but a package that allows them to grow and allows them to continue in the path of their career. So other things that we do include establishing a work-life balance, right? Establishing a good schedule, making sure that people don't get overburned, and that they have that balance that they can feel good about. And of course, it doesn't hurt to say that there are benefits, there are good benefits that come along by working for the city. So even with that, we do have challenges, and there are special verticals in technology in which we constantly have to be in the lookout for folks.
So from my experience working at these technology companies, Apple, eBay, PayPal, in Silicon Valley, what I've noticed is that a method that companies are using to address the budget and expertise shortage is when there's a big project, go out and hire contractors who are subject matter expert in that type of project and implementing it. So that you leave your employees to keep the lights running, right? IT, we need to keep the lights running. So they focus on that. You hire the contractors to come in to do subject matter expert work. And if the contractor happens to work out, have good skills, you can actually go ahead and hire him or her. So that's a way that I've found from my experience of how to approach this topic.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to wrap up very quickly. And as usual, reach out to them individually if you have questions or collaboration opportunities. Sorry, we have to conclude now. So when they are going out on the way, you feel free to grab them. Then I give it to MC. This gentleman said he has.
Yes. Just a question about the technology system architecture. You know, our computer operation system, relation database, network protocols, chips, whatever, was made 40 years ago, 50 years ago. At that time, we only have one computer. And there we have intranet and the internet, but we still use the old system, so that's a big problem. Our cell phone is a wireless telephone system, not a wireless internet. Why a telephone system is circuit switch, internet is packet switch, there's totally separate systems. So this is a key issue. When you design your system, you have to keep this in mind.
Most probably can take the question and answer the gentleman on the side. Sorry, I was a little distracted. And our next panel is already lined up. Thank you for a wonderful job and sharing your expertise.